I like to feature a lot of budget orientated computers and computer parts on this channel. And so today I thought, why not do a video where I take a look at the difference between a 3050 and a 1650 in today's market. And then we will combine these cards with a computer that I think is up to date enough to run today's games, but also to handle these cards well. Now, this computer and these cards are nothing, nothing ultimate these days. These parts are towards the low end of gaming now, especially the 1650, of course. And we are going to be taking a look at what can you squeeze out of these parts in today's market. And of course, these are going to be second-hand components, as I always check for good deals on second-hand components. And for this instance, I am taking a look at eBay and trying to see what can you get out of eBay for good second-hand components that will still allow you to play games. Obviously, we're talking HD. Play the most recent games, but not necessarily at the highest frame rates or at the best settings, of course. And so let's take a look at the 3050. Now, the computer that we've chosen is a old office computer, and we do this because these are the PCs that offer the best value for gaming when you are on the ultra budget. Now, the problem with these computers is that they don't come with very capable power supplies usually, and this means that we need to get something that allows us to use only the PCI power, which is capped at 75 watts. And so for the 3050 we are going with the trimmed down, basically small form factor 3050, but the difference is this one, it doesn't require external power, but it only has 6 gigs of VRAM, which of course is a big sacrifice to make, especially moving into an era where 8 gigs of VRAM is becoming the low end. And so this card, second hand, is $206 from this specific seller. Now the thing about eBay is you can see the amount of reviews that a seller has, and I urge you to do this. You can see the positive ratings that they've received, and so you can sort of deduce whether they are trustworthy. So in this case, this card, it is a ray tracing card. It is the second generation of ray tracing cards, being a third gen from the new Intel sort of series, since the 2010s. And so this card is not capable in today's market, but it's not capable of playing games at high resolution, high frame rate, high settings. It's capable of HD gaming at respectable frame rates with respectable settings, and there's nothing wrong with that. But on the alternate end, the 1650. Now this is honestly getting a bit long in the tooth now, but there are still use cases for this, and of course you are paying $80 less. And so of course this is attractive to some people. And here's the thing. You can still play Fortnite, you can still play Counter-Strike, you can still play Rocket League, Rainbow Six, even Call of Duty. Now, you're not going to be playing anything at the highest settings anymore with this card, but you will play them, and you'll play them at HD, and you'll play them at decent frame rates if you are willing to turn the graphics down. And so there is, of course, still a place for this card in the market, but now this card, also being, not the newest thing, is only a 4 gigabyte card. And of course its bigger brother, the 1660, is the 6 gigabyte variant, which even that is getting a little bit old now. But for this card, there are still use cases for it, and this PC that we are looking at now is a good example of a use case for this card. So I've decided to pair the 3050 or the 1650 with this second-hand Dell Optiplex system, and these systems are basically old office PCs. Now what happens is sometimes offices, they get a new supplier for computers, or it's time to re-up with their supplier, and all of the old computers either get auctioned off, given away, or just sold instantly to someone at a tenth of the price. So this person then turns around and sells it for still a good price, but he or she makes money on that initial sale. So this, of course, is still a good price because we are looking at a C grade, which just means the chassis has a little bit of damage. The chassis has some tearing, some scars, some scratches. That's what I meant, not scars. Some scratches and just a bit of damage here and there. But if you are buying something secondhand and you just want a game, I don't think it should matter too much if you're not going to be looking at it, because obviously this isn't a gaming chassis. You're going to just put this under your desk, so who cares at the end of the day. And this one is C grade, which means it's not broken, but it does have a little bit of damage. And this is a i5 10500, which is quite a good CPU. I mean, that's a relatively modern CPU. I believe that is a 6-core CPU. It comes with 16 gigs of RAM, which would of course be DDR4 RAM, and a 256 gigabyte SSD. Now, if we take a look at some more details here, well, there's not too much more to be said, to be honest, but this is a 10500U, and you know, the rest I've said, and it comes with Windows 11 Pro activated, so that's a plus point. And of course, you can take a look at the positive feedback, 97.6%, that's very good, 7.1 thousand items sold. So this person obviously, for the most part, is a good seller. And the only problem with this, as I said, well, there's two things. The first is the power supply, so you will need to either find a way to upgrade the power supply, which is difficult with these systems because they use specific power supplies that are not the generic power supply. So if that puts you off, then you should not purchase this. But if you are okay with using a lower wattage power supply, but then just using a small form factor graphics card, then this is a good option. So that's why I've chosen these cards, because they don't require any external power, and they can not pull anything more than the PCI power provides, which is 75 watts. So this PC, along with the 3050, is a relatively powerful PC in today's market. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's gonna pump out high refresh rate, high graphics settings. On esports it will, you know, on Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six, you'll get some really respectable above 144 hertz frame rates. Well, hertz refresh rates and frame rates. So there are use cases for this to still be a competitive computer. But this only comes with a 256 gigabyte SSD, and so we should probably add another SSD to it. And in this case, I've just chosen a 500 gig one, which is about $40. But this is an optional extra that you can add if you want to. You don't need to. So that's what I've taken a look at doing. And this PC is going to come in at either around $410 with the 3050, which is the better option, obviously, or around, what would that be, $330, $340 with the 1650. So not extremely expensive to get quite a decent computer. And look, I'm taking the point of view of gaming for this video, but if you do sort of like animation work or design work or 3D work, whatever it might be, video production, this PC will be quite capable of doing that quite well, even with the 1650. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't better options out there, of course there are, but this will be capable of doing that stuff. And this, you know, this PC will be a very multifunctional PC if you decide to get something like this. So to sort of take a look at the performance, I've opened up this video where the person has checked the performance of a 1650 versus a 3050, and these are of course the 4 gig and 6 gigabyte variants, and this channel is Evetech HD. Thanks for them for hosting this video, and let's check it out. So on the 1650, well, let's see if we can see what the, okay, so it's very high at 1080p. On the 1650 we are looking at around 40 to 50 frames more or less. On the 3050 we are getting double that at 100 frames. But the thing is, you know, for the price, let's say you go with the 1650 system at $330, getting, you know, around 50 FPS on a game that is still relatively new, it looks good, you know, getting that on a game like this and having a smooth performance is honestly very impressive. And then on the 3050 side, you know, for about, you know, under $100 more, about $80 more, you are getting almost a high refresh rate experience at HD. So that's very impressive when you think about it. The next game up is God of War, and this is original graphics at 1080p, which is basically like medium. And the 1650 is doing around 40 FPS, and the 3050 is a lot closer, coming in the 60s. So neither of these are the best gaming experience, but neither of them are unplayable either. And this again is a sort of a AAA experience. This is not some esports game. Of course, you can see on the 1650 side there's a little bit of lag, but on the 3050 side it's actually relatively smooth. Now you are playing at medium, but that's what I said. You'll have to drop down the graphics in some games, and it still looks very good. So I'm quite impressed with this result. Next game up, Deathloop, which is also a new game. Very high at 1080p. Now the 1650 is showing its age, but also, to be fair, you won't be expecting to play games at very high graphics on this card. And in this, it's getting around the 30s to 50s, more or less, depending on the scene. And the 3050 is in the 70s. So, all in all, the 3050 has actually impressed quite a bit so far. Next up here is Elden Ring. And this is a very... it's not a recent game anymore, but it's still a very important game to test because it's so popular. So the 1650, let's see what the settings were because I missed that. So this is high at 1080p, and the 1650 again is pushing the 40s. The 3050 is not doing that much better, but it is better. It's around 50 to 60. So both of these are playable experiences. I would probably drop down to medium and probably aim for 60 FPS with the 1650 and about 80 with the 3050. And, you know, what can I say? These are both relatively okay performances. So this isn't the longest video, just a few tests, but it's enough for me to sort of make the point that, you know, the system with the 1650 is... it is a gaming system. You will be able to play games at respectable frame rates, at respectable resolutions. But on the 3050 side, it's actually still quite good, depending on what you need to get out of it and what you want to play. Now, Cyberpunk and Call of Duty and, you know, the newest games, The Last of Us, these games, you will be able to play them, but you're not going to be playing at high, even at HD. You'll probably be playing at low. And you won't be pushing, you know, 80 or 90 FPS. You'll be at around 60 at low. But still, it's still a playable result. The 1650, on the other hand, is not going to be able to play those games at good resolutions for the for your sort of more recent AAA games. Now, like I said, the esports titles, you know, the bunch that I always mention, both of these cards will handle those easily. So if you're just looking to play easier to run games or indie games for the most part, I would say don't worry too much about it. But the thing is, the price difference between these aren't that big because the 3050 system is about $410 and the 1650 system is about $330. So there's only about a $70, $80 difference between the two. And so I would probably, if it were me, I would probably go for the 3050 system and avoid the 1651, just because even if you have to resale it, the 3050 will likely still be relative for a longer period than the 1650. But both are decent options and both will be able to play games, as you can see. So that's going to be about it for the video. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you would like to see in the next one. Let me know if you've been liking the videos. I've been enjoying making them, and I hope that you like watching them. See you in the next one. Cheers.